Welcome to the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, here's your host, Matthew Ablan.
Hello and welcome to episode 76 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This episode of the QCMP is sponsored by Midwood Guitar Studio, Charlotte, North Carolina's own boutique guitar shop located in Plaza Midwood. Midwood Guitar Studio not only has the finest selection in boutique guitars, but familiar names like Fender, Martin, Taylor, Two-Rock, and many others. Whether it's a guitar, bass, amp, effects pedal, or much-needed accessory, the knowledgeable and friendly staff at Midwood Guitar Studio will help guide you in the right direction for your next purchase. Midwood Guitar Studio also has a luthier on staff for all your instrument repair needs. Visit their website at midwoodguitarstudio.com or stop in to see their unique shop at 1517 Central Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina. By the way, if you're a fan of the podcast and want to find out more about me, head over to MatthewAblan.com. There you'll find links to my events calendar, current and past podcast episodes, my performance groups, and a whole host of other information. This month on episode 76 of the QCMP, I'm speaking with Patrick, PJ Justice, and Warren Wheless, who are the founding members of the metal band Fault Reset. The group have recently released the EP Detached, and I was lucky to sit down with the guys and talk all things Fault Reset. All right. Warren Wheless and Patrick Justice from Fault Reset. Welcome to the Queen City Music Podcast, fellas.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right, fellas, let's start in. I always start the podcast the same way. Are you originally from the Charlotte area? Patrick?
I am not from the Charlotte area. I'm from Granite Falls, which is about an hour away, and most of our band members are about an hour away from practice, which is in Shelby, and Warren lives in Shelby. So,
Cool. And Warren, how about you?
I'm originally, I grew up in Clover, Lake Wiley area, but I spent several years in Charlotte, and then after that I ended up moving out to Shelby to get like that rural country feel from where I grew up at. But yeah, that's where we're from. I think originally the Nick is from Texas, the vocalist, and then I grew up with Patrick, the bassist, in the Lake Wiley area.
Great. Mm-hmm. And Warren, what's your music background?
My music background, so I originally started with solo acoustic and contemporary worship.
And we should say you're the drummer for
Oh,
Fault
yeah,
Reset.
I am the drummer.
yes, the drummer,
yes. So I started leading worship, doing that type of deal, and I've always been a fan of classic rock. That's kind of where everything started to ramp up with Zeppelin, Rush, Yes, until I got to like Metallica and started to get into heavy music from there. And then I started to play a lot of metal, started to gig out a lot, started to do lots of stuff with different bands, play a lot of shows, do some mini tours, that type of deal. And then that's pretty much my entire background. I've just been doing it in and out of bands for 17 years.
And we had talked a little bit earlier before we started recording, but what attracted you to the drums?
So just being around them so much and not being able to find a drummer, I think is definitely... Could not find a drummer to save my life who would play the stuff that I wanted to play or play as fast as I needed them to play. They're definitely out there. They're just a lot rarer. Mm-hmm. And so them being around in practice scenarios and them being in like live sets, that type of deal, in rehearsal spaces, I just started to pick it up. And it's something I did was playing more simpler worship music and stuff. I could play drums for that. Then I started to graduate towards metal, which is a lot more difficult of a genre when it comes to drums. And I just got really serious about it about 8 years ago, just wanting to be able to, one, produce better, to know what I was writing and how to write drums. I've always been able to program drums just based off of listening to them, but it was just better to have a more creative feel. And that's why I picked up drums.
Did you do lessons, or did you just start practicing self-taught?
I'm completely self-taught on every instrument I play. So it's I've just been around a lot of drummers. I picked up a few tips and tricks here. Yeah. A lot of good drummers have given me advice, but no actual lessons, nothing like that.
Do you think programming drums, what you're saying, do you think that helped to when you got to the physical instrument?
I think so. Yeah, I think being able to play with a click and understand either the rudiments I'm playing or if it's like 6-tuplet roll or a 5-roll, 7-roll, that really helped with trying to fit things in a certain way and getting the dynamic that I wanted it to sound like, because drums are an extremely dynamic instrument and they have to do a lot with the sound and progression of the song.
Gotcha.
He's using the drum terms. Usually at practice, it's I want to right here and then a right there. But it's like all those have names. Fine,
Professional.
I still want to call them the other thing.
There's what was I looking through Instagram? There was an Instagram reel, and there was 2 guys sitting around with the drummer, the bass player, and the guitar player, and they were like, "No, man, you got to go."
Yeah. There's mouth noises
there.
Yeah.
PJ, how about you? How'd you get into guitar playing? Since you are the guitar player for Fault Reset.
I am, for better or worse. I started playing guitar when I was 15. I grew up in a household that was mainly like Motown hits and country, so I have that background, I guess. And my first actual rock album that got me into heavy music was Creed's Human Clay.
Okay, great.
Oh, absolutely. And when I started playing guitar, I went through my classic rock phase. So it was all Sabbath, Metallica, and just progressed from there. So, Creed, I have Creed's Human Clay to thank for all of it. It's the gateway album to deathcore.
And you guys would define, or could you define Fault Reset as a deathcore band?
Yeah, at this point, I think we just, like we were talking about it earlier, it's just metal to us just because there's so many subgenres.
Yeah.
And deathcore is a part of our sound, but we could also say we have influences from other subgenres that are into us, like gen and groove, and just there's so many at this point that deathcore is the closest thing, I think.
It reminds me, did you guys ever see that movie, A Headbanger's Journey?
I've never seen it.
Don't think so.
Oh, man. All right. There's, at the beginning of the movie, the guy who does films, he's I think it's called Banger Films. He's a Canadian fella, and he does a bunch of rock documentaries. He does some rock Rush documentaries. Did Headbanger's Journey. It was kind of like his entry into it. And great film if you want to check it out.
Headbanger's Journey, okay.
But at the beginning, he actually does a outline, and he shows an outline of the start of heavy metal and all the subgenres and different bands that go into it. And you're like, oh, man, that's actually pretty cool. And he talks to different bands from all over the place. So
I will have to check that out. That sounds interesting. I've seen a lot of like subgenre trees, like what what birthed out of like metal and type. I've seen a lot of stuff with like black metal, all that stuff, how things got black and all that.
Yeah. The family tree.
I have my own like opinions on it. Like it's like of what I know and what I've listened to. Then that's pretty much my own tree. And I've seen how bands have influenced the sound, and most of it's just amalgamations of what a band did, and then people like that sound, and it got combined with another sound, and now it's this subgenre.
Like there's 2 different camps. Who was the first actual heavy metal band? Some people say Sabbath. The majority of people say Sabbath, and then some people say Blue Cheer. Or Deep Purple, and I'm like, have you heard the Iron Man riff? That's it. That's it right there. No question about it.
It is, but I mean, still those early Black Sabbath albums, as much as it is early heavy metal per se, there was a lot of jazz in there, and there was a lot of blues stuff.
Oh, lots of blues.
I mean, you listen to Planet Caravan and
things. Love it.
That's the one thing I loved about early Sabbath, and excuse me, I'm a huge fan.
Same.
Is that they wore a lot of their influences on their sleeves back then, and they weren't afraid to only have this sound.
Yeah.
It developed, but I mean, their stuff had a great groove to it, which I think is part of the breakdown in rock and stuff like that today.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you listen to Sabbath, do you ever notice there's really not any choruses in their songs?
Yeah, no. They write very linearly. Yeah. They don't do the whole hook chorusy thing, but it's still... Like you're saying, it's just a combination of like all these different genres that become this whole new thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you guys are playing in Fault Reset, which we'll classify for all intended purposes as a deathcore band.
Woohoo.
How do you go from Creed and Sabbath? How do you get into the heavier stuff? Is there an attraction that you have to that heavier stuff that you're like, oh, I love that? Because as you guys are pretty aware, not everybody's attracted to every style of music. You could, like, say for myself, for example, if I go into metal, the heaviest I go is into thrash. I'll listen to Megadeth and bands around that area. I am not so much into the growling vocals.
Oh, yeah.
I love like singing, and I'm the growling vocals. Great stuff. Not my cup of tea.
Yeah, and that, I think that when we're younger and trying to find ourselves, our personalities.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with the angst and like just trying to find our places in the world. And that's part of the reason that metal is such a large attraction, or at least for me, that's what it was when I was like 12, 13. Started listening to heavier and heavier and heavier bands like Slipknot and Disturbed, and just started to get more into the technical aspects of things. Whereas the angst wore off and I started to find out who I was. I liked it for the technicality, and a lot of it for, you know, the lyrics, like the fantasy type, even anything just had a large, just how they're able to compose something like that and play it live to me was impressive. And I was like, I would like to be a part of that. And that's part of the reason I started listening to metal as much as I did.
I would definitely say there's people who might dismiss metal, but I'm like, I'll say one thing about metal. I don't care if it's Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath or if it is Fault Reset. You cannot play that style of music and not be able to play your instrument. No. Like, it is not a 3-chord song.
No.
You know, there's technicality in playing that music.
Definitely.
So, absolutely.
PJ, how about you?
Kind of like you. I'm mainly a thrash guy and an 80s type of guy. And the musical peak for me, as far as like really, really good songwriting, was like early 2000s rock, hard rock, and nu metal. But I also didn't like the growling vocals at first. It was a process. You know, like I said, I started with Creed in like 4th grade. Then Linkin Park came out and it was like, oh, there's some growling in there. I don't know if I like that. But that was like Diet Coke, you know.
Yeah.
And then when you're ready for the real thing, you get into like, I think it was Avenged Sevenfold for me. And then like slowly, it's like, I like the riffs, I don't like the growling. And then you eventually deal with the growling, and then you grow to appreciate it. It's like, I can't do that. How do they do that?
Yeah, without killing. Yeah, it's definitely a talent in its own. It takes a lot of practice.
But your parents will, or our parents will always call it, there's that screaming stuff again.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you say that it is definitely like a Diet Coke kind of taste thing, because as much when thrash first started coming out, like Metallica and Megadeth when I was a kid, I was like, that is not for me, because I was more of a blues rock, Zeppelin, Black Sabbath guy. And then this stuff came out. I was like, oh, man, I got to listen to this. And then as I got older, I was like, it's not as heavy as I thought it was.
Yeah.
You know? And I was like, okay, I really dig this. I like this stuff. So.
Yeah, and the speed can be off-putting because it's got that 1-2-1-2 beat really fast. Yeah. And like, I love that type of stuff, but just like anything else, it can get stale after a while. So it's kind of like finding that perfect marriage between like groove and speed.
Right.
To me, yeah, it's that's basically how I define listening to thrash and then moving on to other things in my opinion.
Did you guys also find a community of friends who kind of started getting into that same style of music as you did?
Not really for me in high school. There was only 1 or 2 other people, and it's actually one of my long-term friends that I still have now is one of the other people I grew up with in high school, and Patrick, who's the bassist. And he wasn't listening to quite as heavy things as I was, because he was more into jazz and some other types of like progressive metal.
Right.
But yeah, it was. I was kind of isolated in my and that's part of the reason I've always been open to every genre. I've played most genres of music, just because I can appreciate all of them. But when it come to metal, that was pretty much just a me thing. As far as a lot of the technical, like death metal and technical death metal, even deathcore in where I grew up, it was a smaller town, so there was a very finite amount of friends that I had who listened to the same type of music I did.
That is a funny thing about being a musician and playing a certain style, is that people might pigeonhole you and think that's like, oh, you're metal players. Oh yeah, that's all you listen to. And it's like, turns out all of a sudden you might be like, no man, I've been listening to Ariana Grande. I like her new album. Yeah. And you're like, what? And you're like, yeah, man, I like everything.
Well, it gets to a point, because I have a lot of people that I grew up with who did have somewhat of an elitist mindset like that too. Like, they just listen to metal. We don't like singing.
But you get bored. It gets boring and it gets stale as you as a musician if all you're doing is listen to other metal musicians.
It's definitely something like that was more prevalent in my teenage years. Even for me, for a short time, I just wouldn't listen to clean vocals or anything because I was angry at the world, you know. So nice. But yeah, I think once you get past that, you just start to it gets real boring, and you start to appreciate all the minor things that you hear in music in themselves, and just all the details that involved. And once you start understanding how a piece is written and why it was written and how that singer vocalist felt or how they came together and wrote it. It's, I don't know. It is art.
It is.
Absolutely.
How did you guys wind up hooking up? Because you're from a few years apart, and
About
you're
4,
not from
yeah.
the same area, per se. It's not like you live next door and you grew up as, kids.
Well, I think we were both we were still playing, but we were just kind of inactive musicians at this point.
Okay.
And I remember I was getting tired of playing in standard tuning with thrash riffs and stuff, so I
Right.
got my first 7-string. I was playing, I refer to them as bong riffs because they're really low tuned and chuggy. And I just put out a few videos just like, hey, here's a riff. I hope I'm doing this right. And eventually he reached out to me and asked if I wanted to jam sometime, and I was like, I don't know. He lives about an hour away. That's I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah.
But we ended up meeting up. I introduced him to a few like older songs I had, and he ended up liking them halfway decently, I suppose, because they became songs. But we actually, the first time we met was we both sell and trade used instruments.
Okay.
And we're part of God, I don't know how many Facebook groups that do the same thing. I think it was Carolina Gear Trader was this one. Because it definitely wasn't Marketplace. That's where the darkness lies. Marketplaces.
Which is better than Craigslist.
Oh, yeah.
Arguably. But because he reached out to me asking if I was selling a guitar, and he totally lowballed me, and I was like, no, I know what I have.
Sounds like me.
And then I was like, go away. And then weeks later, hey, you want to jam? Sure, okay.
Yeah. We still became like mutual friends out of that somehow.
That's great.
Yeah, and I would like see videos he's posting. It was mostly guitar videos that I was posting, but I was also a drummer because I was playing drums at that time.
Right.
And he was like looking for a drummer, and I was like, yeah, come to the house. Like, we'll jam. We'll see if there's a vibe or something's meshing here. And
Yeah.
And then it went from there, and that was it. And we started to be able to compose our songs and put them together.
And funny thing, that morning, I was having car problems.
Yeah.
And I sent you a screenshot.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was. It was an
oil
oil
or
issue.
something, yeah.
Because I cranked it and then just like
Yeah, because it was the first. Like, we had been talking for like 2
Yeah.
weeks, and he was supposed to come hang
it was
out.
like it was like a date. It was
Yeah,
like it was
yeah,
like
yeah,
over
it
a
was like a
dating app.
date, yeah.
I was like, okay, we're doing this today.
There's a
And-
low oil light in my car. What does that mean?
I was like,
And then he was
lying to me. Can I trust you? Yeah.
Then he was like, he's blowing me off.
Yeah,
I should have
yeah.
never got back into dating.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we were joking earlier how getting into a band or meeting other musicians is like dating.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got to kind of
It's-
get
yeah.
together, see if there's a vibe, see if you like each other, your personality's going to match, and how that's going to work.
Did he pay for dinner?
Is he buying the beers
Leaving
after
me
the
on
jam?
red. I
Because-
don't know what's going on.
Because if he didn't pay for dinner, I'm an independent woman, so I still, that's fine, but I would rather him pay for it.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So you guys get together. You're the core members, or the original founding members of
Yeah.
Fault Reset. How do you find the other pieces? Who are the other members of the group, and how do you meet them?
So I grew up with Patrick, the bassist. So we reached out to him just to see, because he's actually
Patrick O'Rourke.
O'Rourke, yeah.
Okay.
Just
All
to clarify that, there's two Patricks, bass player Patrick and me, but I am now PJ because I've got cooler initials, and I lost my name, but I gained initials, so it's fine.
Patrick's initials are POR, just POR.
POR.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Mine's PJ. I'm like, that's like an MC name. All right.
but yeah, I grew up with Patrick, so he's actually a wonderful guitar player, and he'd been playing bass, like just kind of messing around with it, and started doing it. I was like, hey, come try. Let's see how we work out in Fault Reset. We need a bassist, and if it's something you want to do, and that's how that grew. And he was like, yeah, I'm enjoying this.
Okay.
We paid for dinner.
Yeah, yeah. And for Nick, the vocalist, it's actually funny because PJ could tell it better than me.
Yeah, what ended up happening is my buddy Mason reached out. He's in a local band called Heft, and they're awesome. You should check them out.
Okay.
But he sent Nick my way because Nick was new in town. I think he'd been in North Carolina
Like a couple months.
just a couple months.
Yeah.
And he's used to being in bands like constantly. Like the guy's a workhorse, like honestly. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Mason sent me over. You guys looking for a vocalist?" And of course, I was like, I don't know. Send me some sound clips, please. And then we had a little separate group chat. It was like Idol or something. It was like, well, I think he's got potential, but I don't like this and all this stuff. And we didn't have the forethought to be like, we should have made a separate group chat because we ended up adding him in that same one.
Right.
So he could literally scroll up and see what we've been saying.
You're like,
and then it was like, you sure? I heard you didn't like my clean sound. God, I don't know. Deletes message. But the first practice, it was just like immediately there was just like something there.
You felt it, yeah.
Yeah, because in metal, the typical vocals for this type of style is like aggressive, some more harsher than others, but it's all about can you perform the vocals without tiring yourself out? Can you be consistent with it, and can you find your place in the music doing those vocals? And we really didn't have an issue. We were just kind of like doing nods of approval throughout the thing.
Because with different vocalists, it's when it comes to harsh vocals, it's more about placement rather than it is melody. It's more about lyric writing.
Right.
And for him, it's more about being original because there are a lot of harsh vocals that end up sounding the same.
Yeah.
Like you can't differentiate what they are, but there are specific vocalists who have a very original sound, and you could hear them for 10 seconds and know it's that vocalist.
Right.
Even though it's screaming, it's harsh vocals. But he definitely fits into that niche, I think, and his lyric writing is great. And he's just all around a really good performer and frontman and knows how to talk to a crowd, which is very important.
So is that the catchphrase for somebody like me who's not in the know? Is that's what it's officially called? The growling is called harsh
vocals is usually what harsh vox or harsh vocals. You can call it is screaming, and that's what it originated as.
Everything our grandparents don't like.
Yeah. But we just call them harsh vocals, and then you have clean vocals, and that's you got singing and you have screaming.
I did remember reading an article by, and I don't even know who the singer was, but they were talking about how like you really kind of need to be careful doing that style
definitely.
because you can really mess up your voice.
Yeah, there is a correct way to do it, and there is a very incorrect way to do it, and you're not supposed to hurt your throat at all, but and that's pretty much it. Like that, you have to do it from your diaphragm, and there's tons of videos like that saying like you can't do it the wrong way, or you'll cause permanent damage.
Yeah, it's very guttural.
Oh yeah.
Very guttural.
And there's different types. There's different types of techniques that vocalists will use, like fry screaming. Yeah. False chord is another large one, and that's inhales. Yeah. But yeah, if you do it the wrong way, you can really hurt yourself. And it's definitely something you need to take the time. And that's what a lot of people try to rush in and learn it all in a month or something like that. And it takes years of practice. It can
to not hurt yourself doing it.
Yeah. To understand, because you're activating muscles in your diaphragm.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, singing, you have to practice it to understand how you're singing, if you're belting or if you're doing your head voice, that kind of stuff.
Breathing techniques.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even interesting to me when I hear female vocals fronting and doing the harsh vocals. So cool. You're like, what the?
Yeah.
It's got a whole different sound to it.
It does. Yeah. It does. And PJ, you said earlier that we were talking before we started recording that you weren't originally attracted to the harsh vocal sound.
Definitely not. Mainly because, at first it was like a little bit like, oh God, what is that? But I like being able to hear the lyrics. But it's kind of like I was saying before, if the music around it's good and it glues together nice, like I actually grew to like the harsh vocals.
Okay.
And it's not something today that I'm very experienced in. Like I'm always used to them Metallica type vocals. They're like a little harsh, but nothing like screaming or pushed, I guess is a good word for it. But no, like I've really grown to appreciate harsh vocals, and Nick's vocals are like almost goblin-like.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Nick is
if you're into that type of thing.
Yeah. Warren, were you attracted to the harsh vocals right away? Or was it something
I think
that you
I
had
was
to get
I really can't think about when I wasn't. I never really liked them. It really, for me, it was more of a ramp. Like there was like I started getting into Disturbed.
Yeah.
And there was this like minor screaming Linkin Park as well. And then I slowly ramped up to like Slipknot. But for me, I went full in head first and started listening to like slamming death metal, which is one of the heaviest genres when I started in like 9th grade.
Okay.
And I actually kind of dialed it back from there and got more into the technicality of metal and was playing a lot of guitar, but the vocals for me, just the intensity of them. And then the lyrics, like he's saying, you can't understand them unless you listen to metal for you can start to understand syllables and kind of guess what they're saying. And there are some vocalists out there who have better pronunciation than others. But for me, I've always liked them. And there's so many different styles. I feel like you can get a lot of different emotions across, kind of the same way that singing does with vibrato and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know about in your household, but if I put on anything that had anything like screaming in it, immediately the door opened and one of my parents is just giving me this look. And it's like, what did we buy you?
So you guys you met, got a core of musicians. The group that you got together when you first met, is it the same musicians now in the group?
We've had 2 lineup changes, I'd say.
Yeah. It originally started with me, you, and my friend Chase, and then we had a lineup with a second guitarist, but he recently parted ways with us, so it's now just 4-piece. It's
okay.
1 guitar, 1 bass, drums, and vocals.
So you being the guitar player, PJ, how do you like being? Are you looking for another guitar player, or do you like being the only guitar player?
I like being the only guitar player. It definitely comes with its share of challenges. But fortunately, Warren has been extremely great with the production and everything, and making it sound thicker, and not really needing a second guitarist.
Yeah.
And everybody in the band is a comparable guitar player.
Gotcha.
Like Warren's amazing, Patrick's amazing, Nick is writes really catchy stuff. So I kind of consider myself a vessel for all of our riffs because they're not all just mine.
So everybody tells you what you got to do.
He's our
right?
medium. Like we just
I'm like I can hear the riffs, and they're in the room with us right now.
How many guitar players does it take to screw her up in light bulb?
4 apparently.
4.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. Because I always found whenever I played in, not that I've played in tons of groups with other guitar players, but the few groups that I have played with other guitar players, it's always been a challenge, like playing with other people, because you have to have a different mindset playing with somebody else, and you have to be open to playing with somebody. And there's always somebody who's more skilled and somebody who's less skilled. At least in my experience, you don't always have the same people who are on the same level. And what the ability is, and then somebody's a little more opinionated, and somebody's a little more okay, man. A little more laid back and willing to work with other people.
Yeah, it's like somebody might have to step it up, somebody might have to dial it back.
Yeah, and
like Warren is a very technical death metal guy. Like he plays stuff that I wouldn't even fathom playing. And I like my shreddy stuff too. I can play leads and stuff, but nothing like that. And some riffs, I'm like, I don't want to do that. And then some are like, I like that. I'm going to practice to make that riff happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like we were talking about before we started recording, was just coming into, like you said, writing with other people can pose its challenges.
Yeah.
And learning to set your ego aside, and if this is going to be an actual collaboration, that everyone has a democratic input. Like we all vote on it at the end of the day. If it's something that you love and you know, then we'll stick with it, and you just have to learn how to make the sacrifice that it's not always going to work out the way that you want it to work out. And that is part of being in a collaboration.
That being said, how do you guys do your songwriting? How is it structured? Do you guys all come together and jam? Does PJ bring in some riffs? Do you bring in some riffs? It's
pretty much, yeah. I mean,
yeah. It always starts out. It always starts out this way. Like, okay, we need to run the set today. It's like, no, how about this? I got this one riff, and then it's kind of like, it's more like, I hate to sound all philosophical, but it's more like an idea.
Yeah.
And it's something you thought of at home, and then it's like, is that idea, can we expand on it? Like how much juice is in this lemon? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if there's enough there, then it might become a song. And like in typical songwriting for us, I like everybody's input. So we won't sit there and write an entire song and then just go up to everybody's like, here's the song, learn it. So it's more like write a good bit, enough to establish the idea. And if everyone likes it, we'll proceed with the idea. And I'd like everybody's ideas on it, so it doesn't just sound like one person.
Okay.
Because like we were saying earlier, if you got one person writing everything, eventually it's going to start sounding boring, stale,
Right.
what have you, or predictable, and that's something I definitely try to avoid.
Yeah. Well, I think before we started recording again, we talked about how musicians may have. I saw Jack Black say it, which it kind of makes me laugh. Have so much rocket juice, and some bands, their rocket juice will last, 50 years, and some bands' rocket juice is only a couple of years.
Rocket sauce.
Oh, rocket sauce. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. But the nice thing is if your well is deep, not even with just rocket sauce, with your stylistic influences. Like, do you guys listen to stuff outside of metal that you would bring
definitely.
in?
Oh,
that
yes.
it's like,
we
like
have a
this?
very wide palette of genres between all of us because we all listen to crazy things. Like, we all have. I listen to neo soul and jazz and Daniel, like Marvin Gaye type stuff.
I listen to 90s thug rap a lot and video game music from like the Super Nintendo era.
There you go, yeah.
There's like, I get a lot of ideas from that because honestly, I don't listen to metal while I'm driving, especially because it makes me drive worse. Like I'm like, I feel like I should speed
You're
up now.
aggressive, yeah.
And I have a Prius, so like you're not going to get fast anyway. But, yeah.
That's great.
But yeah, I mean, even with Patrick, and Patrick is a big jazz guy. He listens to a lot of jazz, writes a lot of jazz, all types of like Japanese, like J-pop, K-pop. We're both into that. Nick listens to that as well. We both listen to like with emo grunge, anything like that, like The Cure. We have a wide thing that we pull from all of our ideas.
So when the music is getting the collaborative effort, how about the lyrics? Are you primarily leaving that up to your vocalist to do?
Yeah.
Or do you guys all come, when he comes in, when you go, we don't like those, let's change
that is
this?
sometimes what'll happen, yeah.
Yeah, definitely that second one that you mentioned. He has journals and journals full of lyrics, and it's all about which one has the correct placement in the song.
Right.
Because he wrote these at some point in his life, and he really liked them, and he presents them to us, and it's more about like, does it fit with this song, and then we can go over the lyrical content.
Yeah.
And Nick's a great songwriter, so we rarely have any criticisms. It's mainly the title. It's like, okay, well, what's the title?
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. So that you say it. So for me, when I've written a song, I've always got the chord changes first, and then since I do vocals with melodies and I'm not doing harsh vocals, the melody comes in and then I can write the words in a flow. How does that work with harsh vocals since there's not really a melody?
Yeah, that's what I was
doing. How does that fit? Is it rhythmically over the chord changes?
Yeah, rhythmically is where you want to go, and I think that we more have critiques on his placement rather than his actual lyrics.
Okay.
Like every once in a while, we'll change some words around or something that doesn't sound quite right. But I think more, especially when it comes to like we are producing and recording, that's when things actually get changed around. Because then you have that template of like this is our entire song, and you can play around with how things sound and how you want them to sound. Yeah. If you want them on the downbeat, the offbeat, or rhythmically with what the guitars or drums are doing.
It's more hip hop almost.
Yeah, yeah. There's a flow to it when it comes to harsh vocals.
And one thing I try to bring to the table is I like pop music, and I like to write in a pop format. So for me, it's got to have memorable parts in it, because if you don't, you just riff after riff. That's what we call riff salad.
Yeah.
And some of us like riff salad, and I'm just like, you got to have a top line. You got to have something in there that's catchy, something that makes you remember it. Right. Even if it's bad, at least you remember something about it. Because it's just riff after riff, in my opinion, just like, oh, I mean, there's lots of riffs in there.
Yeah. So how long from the original startup of Fault Reset did you guys start writing original music? I'm guessing from the start, it was like, we're going to start writing original music. We're not going to go out and do covers.
Yeah. Just completely wanted to do our own original music. And we've toyed around with the idea of doing like some covers to throw in our set or something like that, like System of a Down covers or anything like that. And it's just not came to fruition. Like we just haven't found. And if it's still on the table, like we may eventually do it. But I think all of us just enjoy writing and playing our own music right now.
It's awesome. And you've got just released an EP. So, but help me out, because we talked about it again earlier, but looking on Spotify, it looks like you just released singles. Did you release the EP? Did you release the singles first? What did you? How did that work?
Well, the first single we released as a single was Chapter Black.
Okay.
And after that, we re-recorded Chapter Black, and we recorded 2 other ones and released that as an EP.
Okay.
And we released that last year sometime, and we're currently working on a 5-song EP that we took the month of June off to just solely to record that.
Mm-hmm. So, out of curiosity, why do a single format first and then an EP? Why are you guys just not saving it and doing an album? Do you, being a younger generation, younger than I am, do you feel that the full length album is a dead format, or do you? What's your thoughts?
I think me and Warren both have a similar idea on this. We would love to do a full length. Mm-hmm. And I think what a full length is like at least 10 songs now, 8 to 10 songs, I believe, like or that. More. That just takes lots of time, money, and effort. Yeah. And in my opinion, in today's musical climate, it's all about content. It's how long can you keep the content flowing for social media, because that's a big driving force in entertainment today, huge driving force. And if you do a full length album, you can promote that for a few months, but after a while, it's like, okay, I've heard that already. Right. It's our attention spans, in my opinion, are a lot shorter these days because of all the stuff we have available to entertain us. And singles and EPs, you can hype that up over a month, if not more. You can release it. You can for lack of a better term, milk that for a couple months after, and you can keep that going a lot longer than you could a full album. But I mean, I'm an old school guy. I like my full albums too, but it just makes more sense to me to do singles and EPs, and then when you have enough support built up, then do a full length.
Right.
Yeah, and I think even with like the metal community as a whole, like even in terms of metal, most full length albums that are released in metal are only about 8 to 9 songs. They've actually shortened quite a bit because most people can only handle, like you said, so much. It gets boring. It can get boring, especially if you're a metal band that doesn't have a lot of contrast in your sound.
Right.
I think that for the same reason is why even most metal bands are only releasing singles or EPs, and they can put a lot more into it and they can make it the way they want to make it instead of working entirety on a full length and it taking 2 years to release, that they want to just progressively keep everyone's attention.
Right.
And you drop a single, hype a single up, drop an EP, hype the EP up or anything like that. Or some bands will just release a single a month.
Right.
And then they'll release the whole full length that all the singles are on.
True.
Yeah, and in my opinion, doing singles just makes you want more. So when you get that full length, it's like, okay, I've been waiting. I've listened to so many singles, so many EPs, and now there's a full length. Like now, all the stuff you've been working toward is here. So now this is like a much bigger package for me to work with.
Right.
As a listener.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, there's just so many things going on. You probably have, let's say, major artists for the most part. They're releasing full-length albums still.
Yeah, like pop artists,
Yeah, and then
who
you have
that support built up,
Yeah, and you have I'll say lower-tier artists.
Mm. Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
And they are releasing EPs and singles. Mm. And I almost think that the EPs and singles are almost the way to go in today's market, because if you write a new song and then you wait and you do another song, well, you have EPs are like 2 to 5 songs.
Yeah, usually.
Right?
Yep.
And for those not in the know, an EP is extended play. It used to be a single, which was one thing, and then you add a 45, which is you could have the A side and the B side, and then you have extended play off the 45, which is 2 to 5 songs, and then you have the full length album.
Oh, that's what that stands for.
Which is LP, which is long play.
Yeah, long play and extended play.
Yeah. So, but if you write a bunch of songs, for those, I guess, not in the know again, musicians are generally in a certain headspace when you're writing that set of songs. Yes, so they kind of flow together and they work together.
Yes.
And you guys might write another EP in 6 months or a year from now, and it might sound similar to what you do because that's your sound, but you may have been in a different mindset.
Yeah, it may be a whole different concept.
That's exactly what we've been experiencing. So yeah.
And your style might change a little bit. You might like, let's add this in. Oh, hey, wait a minute. Fault Reset wasn't doing that 6 months ago.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of changed up a little bit, which is real interesting to see where artists take things. So I think you're not stuck in something.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you don't want to box yourself off.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of cons to that, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you guys sent over a few songs. One of them is Chapter Black.
Yep.
Is this one of the songs that got released as a single, or is this on the EP?
It's on the EP, and it is the first single we ever released.
Okay.
So like he was saying, we released it as a single, and then it ended up being re-recorded with 2 other songs, and that was released as an EP. But yeah, it is the first single we ever released.
What was the name of the EP?
Detached.
Detached. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Can we take a listen to Chapter Black?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. This is Chapter Black by Fault Reset. Guys, awesome track. I want to talk a little bit about recording and what's involved with it. So when you guys are recording, are you going to a studio, or are you recording from home, or how are you doing the tracks?
Yeah, so I have a basement studio that I've been working on for a long time, as well as Patrick. The bassist has quite a nice studio that he is set up with. And right now we're doing pretty much exclusively recording ourselves. And you were talking about earlier, we may in the future be collaborating with other studios and stuff like that as far as editing, mixing, mastering. I believe the EP was actually mastered by
It was definitely mastered by somebody other than you.
it was Landon. He plays in a band called Reflect Refine.
Okay.
And
that was him.
Yeah, and he runs a studio. Yeah, he runs a studio in South Charlotte.
Okay.
And it's a great studio. But yeah, right now we're solely producing ourselves, and I mean the process it's tolling. I mean there's a lot that goes into it as far as coming up with backing tracks and running top lines, melodies, atmosphere, drones, bass drops. For us, I think they usually starts off with drums and guitar. So it's going to be our drums right now are currently programmed, and I just make them sound as real as I can because I'm the one playing them, so I know exactly what I'm doing.
Right.
I know how to program really well with dynamics and stuff like that, to where we do have the option to record them, but most of the things in metal these days are sampled over. So the kick and the snare and some of the toms are all sampled anyway.
Okay.
So they'll take a live sound and they'll blend it to where you have a sampled sound recorded in a multi-million-dollar studio that's blended in, and then they do it from there.
Neat. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and usually actually anyone who tracks metal now will most likely sample the entire kit when you track it, so that if you have a bad take, they'll actually use the sample they created because it'll be nice and clean.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean with the fast double bass and all that kind of stuff, it's much easier to get a good sound
Is that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Is that why you have that particular metal drum sound? Because the drums are kind of sampled like that?
Yeah, most likely, because what most producers will do nowadays in metal is there's a plethora of different types of samples that have been recorded in many good studios, and they'll use some sort of sampler to blend most of those together to get the sound they're going for as well as what the artist is actually going for. And from there, that's exactly why. Like if you're gonna have really fast double bass, you're gonna have a lot of click in it because it's for that pronunciation, it's for that high end click. If it's something more hard hitting in metal, like down tempo or beat down, something like that, then it has a lot of punch and boom to it. And that's just because they're not hitting 30-second notes at 200 BPM.
And how about guitars? Are you guys using amps? Are you miking amps, or are you going direct and using technology?
Kind of like the program drums and the evolution of like equipment and all the stuff you can use in a studio.
Sure.
There's these, if you're unfamiliar with them, they're called amp sims.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
just a digital impression of an amp. And there's digital impressions of cabinets as well. But it's at the click of a button rather than you having to mic everything up. And if you've ever mic'd a guitar cabinet, you know every inch or every half inch matters and can change the sound completely. So we use amp sims, and it just takes the direct guitar signal and puts that amp sim over them. And it's much easier, and it gives you a lot more room to play with the tone. And what I really like is you can even record a real amp and blend those two, much like you can blend a drum sample, and it just makes for a more cohesive sound rather than hauling a 4x12 up a flight of stairs into a studio, spending an hour trying to find the right mic placement, and then hopefully getting the sound you want out of that, and not really being able to manipulate it much because it's mic'd up.
And how about live? Are you using Sims live, or are you using actual amps?
Now, I still maintain my old schoolness a little bit when it comes to live. I have switched to digital modelers.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that technology has came so far to where it makes more sense to me rather than hauling around a bunch of heavy equipment.
Sure.
I will, I use something called a Line 6 Helix, and it has amp modelers in there, and I use an amp model, and it runs off to 2 cabinets, but you really don't even have to use cabinets. You could just run to the front of the house and he gets your signal and plays it through the PA. But I don't know, maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I still like hauling around speaker cabinets to it's more of a feel thing
Get that
for me.
stage sound for sure.
Yeah, and you don't have to depend on the sound person as much when you have that.
Yeah.
You still have your stage volume.
Because I know that a lot of bands, smaller bands, have been using. They're traveling. It's just easier for them if they're traveling.
That as well. Yeah,
they're not even using stuff. I went to see Nita Strauss last year,
Oh,
year and a
wow.
half ago, something like.
She's
long ago.
amazing.
Yeah, she's a great guitar player. And then I saw her on. I'll say Guitar World. I can't remember who it is.
Yeah.
But they did an interview with her, and they were showing her on stage, and they were talking. And she said, "Yeah, when I go for my solo tours, I use this Boss."
It's a Boss multi-effects unit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I use this 8 RP 1000 or something like that she uses.
Numbers.
And she's like, it's just easier to put this in a bag and carry it and then go direct right in. And I've got all my sounds programmed. She said when she's on tour with Alice Cooper, because she's Alice Cooper's guitar player, or one of them, she said she'll bring amps and stuff because it's a bigger production.
Yeah, you have people who are going to load for you and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it's
we don't have
easier.
that.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious because I mean, a lot of bands, today, if you can get the Sims and have that all set up, an quote unquote airless stage with air getting pushed around by amplifiers is the way a lot of people are going.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It just makes the most sense.
Yeah, especially in metal because there's a lot of gear that you have to have where most people now will just rely on having an entire rack. Like we have a rack full of, not in Fault, but in another band, a rack full of Kempers and an X32 for our inner mix and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And just have some cabs, that rack, and then the drum set. And that's it. And you can send what you want to send to front of house, and you can send what you want to your cabs, and everyone can just, it makes setup, tear down a lot easier, touring a lot easier. The less room for failure than with tube amps and stuff like that.
Then the failure is just in your hands as a player.
Yeah.
I hope you don't do.
Yeah.
Yeah, music has definitely progressed. I mean, being able
definitely.
to record at home for us everyday average musicians. We're not talking big rock stars going into major studios. I mean, recording at home and then even just playing live, being able to go direct into stuff.
Not to mention the knowledge bases you have if you want to get into it. Just
oh my gosh.
There's videos upon videos you can learn within a matter of weeks, and just you don't immediately have to run to a studio when you want to record something.
Which some would say is also a downfall because now
true,
as a musician, since you have to know all this stuff, you take less time away from coming up with ideas.
Yeah,
right.
It's option fatigue. I believe is what they call it.
What are they? Yeah, it's like the Axe Effects. It's
I thought that was just option
paralysis.
Or
Option paralysis.
Fatigue paralysis. They're one and the same, if you ask me.
I mean, being a DIY musician, I mean, people don't think about it. If you're doing it, most of us have some kind of mini recording studio or computer with recording. So you've got to learn how to use that. Mm-hmm. Promoting yourself.
Yep.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Throw that on top of it. Learning your own music.
Yep.
Writing it. Having time to practice your own stuff. I mean, there's a lot in.
Oh yeah, that goes into
today.
wanting to play out, play live, and
you can't just be decent at your instrument anymore. Yeah. It's like you have to be savvy with social media to reach the max audience possible, and then you got to learn about trending and stuff. And just see, I'm getting a headache already.
Well, I actually want to talk about social media in a little bit, but I still want to listen to one more track from Detached. Can we listen to the track Satori?
Yes, yeah.
That is the if we had a radio hit, that would be it.
Yeah, it is the most radio friendly song in terms of how it was written. It has a large giant chorus in it. Cool. But comparatively to the other two tracks, it's definitely.
It even has a small little solo in it. I got a tweedly-dee a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let's take a listen to Satori off the EP Detached.
Detached, yep.
By Fault Reset. Guys, another pretty cool track. That is your radio-friendly hit with some Tweedledee in there, huh?
Yeah.
So I got to ask, Satori, what is that name about?
I think I'm pretty sure that the lyrics that Nick had written for that song, I came up with that name, or I pitched it to the band because Satori is the Japanese word for enlightenment or awakening. And I think a lot of the lyrics had to do with that type of just cohesiveness, like and it just fit really well, and that's what we went to. I don't even think he actually says that word in the entire song, or anything. Like everything that he explains in the song, as far as the lyric writing, has to do with being enlightened and awakened, and that's pretty much the whole song's about.
Yeah, that's how we do a lot of our titles. It's got to sound cool first of all, but it also, the name has to encompass the idea of the song, and you'll find that a lot of our lyrics, if you can understand what they're saying, they are very rooted in like anime and that type of stuff. Yeah. 'Cause that's something we all enjoy. That's a media that we've all like. We watch anime. We grew up on it, and there's so many things to write about within that.
But yeah, and I think a lot of and the newer stuff with the new EP coming out, Nick is just channeling a lot of anything personal with him. Like it gives him a medium to output any type of something he wants to say, or it gives him a medium of his art so he can express his feelings as far as when it comes to any type of like mental, like depression, any of that stuff, any of that has to do with. That's, I think, more what the newer EP is about. Yeah,
the newer EP definitely diving into some like, I don't want to say more serious topics, but just more close to home topics.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'm just curious. So you guys jokingly say this is our most radio friendly hit. Would you see, or maybe even currently, as you guys are starting to write more music, do you see yourselves softening up a little bit where you might use more regular vocals in there rather than the harsh vocals at some point. Like, and I think about like Mastodon, right? They had harsh vocals for a long time, and then it seems like they really started adding more melodic stuff into their vocals to give that, for better lack of a better way to say it, more mass appeal.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I would go see Mastodon, and I'd get to the harsh vocals. I'd go, and then when they started singing, I was like,
Yeah, and some people are the complete opposite of that.
Yes. Yeah. Especially if you're an old school Mastodon fan.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts?
We definitely we want to write stuff that we enjoy.
Yeah.
Which is mostly the harsher vocals, but it's also like, we're not opposed to experimenting with things and having clean vocals maybe at some point. As long as it fits, as long as we all agree that it sounds good with it. Yeah. I don't think we would start something off like, okay, this one we're going clean in this one, we're going full Nickelback in this one. Yeah. It has to like most of our songs. We have to be in the room. It just has to make sense.
Right.
I wouldn't say we would do something for more appeal.
Right.
If it's something that we truly don't want to do.
Right.
But I mean, mass appeal is important. You obviously want to get more fans and you want to reach the biggest audience possible.
Sure.
But going back to what I said before, if it makes sense to do it, we would. So that yeah.
And even on the newer EP, we've started experimenting more with that, with as far as Nick's dynamic range, with different types of vocals, like not just sticking to just straight harsh vocals and maybe like a pushed clean instead or a pushed shouting,
right?
As well as like there are some just like minor parts where it's either cleans or talking or something like that. So I mean, it's definitely not off the table, like he's saying, maybe like meet at a halfway point, but as long as it makes sense in the what we're trying to portray as far as the emotion of the song or just the overall cohesiveness of an album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to pigeonhole you guys and say, you got to do that? You know, I'm just curious, like where your we talked about influences, you know, and it's like you had said, we definitely bring influences, and I don't want to. I was just curious if you would be rigid in the future, like this is the only way we're gonna do it. That's it, you know, or if you're like, no, we could do this and we could try this, and see what works for us. So
I feel like decades ago that might have been more like of a thing because you can establish your sound and you can keep that sound because it's still new and original.
Yeah.
But let's face it, especially in metal music, so many things have been done to death. It's like you have to, in my opinion, you have to be open to new ideas because you can't just do one thing forever and be successful at it unless you've were the originator of that idea.
Right.
Like AC/DC, for instance.
And been doing the same thing for a long time, and they do it well.
And the cash is still rolling in.
Yeah. So we were talking about mass appeal. Mm-hmm. That being the case, let's dig into the Charlotte area metal scene.
Okay.
What is that like? Are there a lot of places to play? Are there a lot of shows? Is it a very small, tight-knit community? I don't really. That's not a circle I run in. I run in more like solo acoustic covers.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for about 10 years as far as playing metal and playing it out, and as far as the local scene goes. I would say, like we were talking about it earlier, it ebbs and flows as far as what is around here with venues currently and places to play. It seems like there has been a lot of venues recently that they don't put on metal shows.
Right.
Specifically, they don't put them on. I'm not sure why. I think when Amos is reopened, they don't do a lot of metal shows. Tremont closed, of course. But there have been some newer venues popping up, like the Rooster in Gastonia. There's still Ground Zero in Spartanburg. There's smaller venues that are popping up to give us places to play. With the metal scene right now, I know there was in the last 10 years, there's been a larger kind of revival with it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of metal local bands that are still playing frequently, and there's a lot of metal bands like Filth just got on a large, and they're actually from Shelby, North Carolina.
Okay.
And they got on Summer Slaughter, which is a giant metal festival basically, and it's a tour. And there are bands still making it out of this area. Even like BT Bam is from Winston-Salem. They're a progressive metal band.
That's short for Between the Buried and Me.
Yeah, Between the Buried and Me. trying to think if there's been any other really bigger bands to come out of our scene. And you see them, and there's a lot of really good bands in our scene right now that, I mean, like Reflect, Refine, Wither the Fowls, just bands all over that are doing wonderful things and just trying to push the image and trying to make an original sound. Then that's basically what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and the audience is absolutely there, but I don't know anything about running a venue at all, but I think I can understand that the cover band route probably brings in a more broader audience, probably brings in more money, and the metal crowd, it's like it's its own community, and you have to be able to take a risk on that community. But I feel like if you do, the audience is absolutely there. Like if you put on a metal show with a good lineup, people will come out. It's not the stereotypical like rowdy crowd like that you might think it is.
Most of them are sweethearts. Most metalheads are sweethearts. Yeah, they're just like in every community. There's a bad egg, and some of them and people are going to be rowdy. But most of the time, most metalheads are sweethearts, and they just want to be there and listen to the type of music they like. But I mean, there's still bands coming around here that are bigger metal bands, and they're still selling out shows at bigger venues like. I would say like Neighborhood and the Underground and stuff like that. They're still selling out shows there. So there's definitely still a metal community in Charlotte that is pretty prevalent.
I think it's one of the problems, if you want to call it a problem, one of the issues with the Charlotte music scene right now is that it is largely, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right on the money, it's largely the cover scene.
Yeah, definitely.
And the original music scene definitely takes a backseat to it. And I don't care if it's metal. I don't care if it's pop. It's right now what keeps people at a place drinking or brings people in.
Yeah, they love live music.
Yeah.
Covers are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I can start to see it in over the next 10 years or so. It might start to bring out more of an original scene.
Yeah.
But since I've been here, when I got here, there wasn't a large music scene in Charlotte. And there have been more places as Charlotte has grown with the breweries and restaurants, there's more places to play.
Yeah.
And more venues. You guys mentioned the Rooster opening Gastonia. So there's other places, other venues opening. So hopefully as they do, they'll be more welcoming of more styles.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to how it plays out with just the scene in Charlotte in general, just because, I mean, Charlotte is such a fast-growing city right now, and you see all the suburbs of Charlotte, like Gastonia, Belmont, Fort Mill, Indian Trail, all that stuff, Lancaster, they're all starting to expand as well because of Charlotte, because it's getting so big. Even out where I live in Shelby, it's becoming, like you said, there are breweries popping up, there are places to play, bars, and just venues are popping up. So, I mean, it's going to be great, I think, in the next 10 years, like you're saying, and we're going to see a lot of growth in every genre, even if it's pop, rock, even metal, and just, I don't know. I think it'll be wonderful.
Yeah, there's even just venues that would normally cater to acoustic players and stuff. They're doing emo rock shows and stuff now. So, that type of scene, the punk scenes, there's a lot more places for them to play. And so that's also a great thing because, those people typically are also metal fans and vice versa.
I mean, we could bring up our first show that we ever played. He was talking about that is basically a bar in Morganton called Homer's.
Okay.
And it's like a small bar, and there were probably over 100 people at our first show, and it was played in an alleyway.
And we brought our PA and stuff, and we played with a emo rock band, Deep Rest, and a death metal band called Angel Massacre, and they were all from the Morganton area. And we played an alley with a PA, and it actually sounded great. And we expected, kind of like
20 people.
I'm like, if 20 people show up, I'm happy because that's 20 people that typically you wouldn't have heard you. But there were 100, and it was amazing.
It was great. The whole back alley was covered, and it was because there is a brewery right next to it with a back porch, and then there's Homer's, which is a bar with a back porch.
And there was a gaping hole in the concrete that was very sketchy, but people were dancing. They fell right in it and got up. It was great. I hope they patched that hole.
Yeah. But there were a lot of younger, up and coming metalheads, basically. Yeah, people who are still in their teenage years who they can relate to some of the things that we're doing and some of the type of music we're playing.
So that makes me think, and I want to ask, having been doing music myself since I'm a kid. And knowing the state of how music has changed since I was a kid and what's been happening, and even since you guys are younger, because you're a few years younger than me, what are you looking to do musically, professionally? How do you want things to go? What is your hope? Are you looking to be able to are your dreams small, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Are your dreams small, like, hey man, we're happy we're putting out our music and we're happy to maybe go out and do some mini tours? Or are you thinking like, man, our goals, we want to become the premier deathcore metal band in the world? I mean, dreams always start small, of course, but I mean, you can have large dreams. What are you thinking?
I think the four of us kind of share the same idea here, where it's like we're all in our 30s.
Yeah.
Actually, you're not. Are
Nope.
you, Warren?
29.
Never mind.
It's like I'm the baby.
Yeah, always 29. Yep.
Okay, well, you will be in your 30s soon enough. And we've all we had our young teenage band, and we put all of our effort into that and stuff. And I feel like now, since we're older, it's a more realistic view on things.
Yeah.
But like, I actually really like that, because it's like, for like right now, it's about having fun.
Right.
We know what we need to do. We know, like, you're supposed to promote, you're supposed to do all the social media things, you're supposed to look for your shows and stuff, but it's definitely more realistic being in the band now.
Yeah.
And it's like, as long as it's fun, we're going to keep doing it, and we're going to see how far it goes. But when it stops being fun and it starts being stressful, we'll have to dial it back a little bit. But we're just trying to keep it light, keep it fun, but also take it seriously.
Right. Do you guys have a hope of, when you get enough material out, that you could get onto a tour and open up for folks? Because I know touring is an expensive proposition. Is that something that you'd like to do, like either nationally or at least regionally?
I think regionally, because what's happening a lot, especially with bigger metal tours and just tours in general, what they usually do is they'll have 6 bands on a tour, and you'll see them regionally. They'll play little mini tours within that tour, basically, and a band will only do the East Coast because they're from the East Coast, and it makes it more feasible for them. And I think like stuff like that, for sure, we'd be down to do like a weekend. I don't think
long mini tours,
mini tours, and be playing with like some bigger metal bands and start spreading it a little more when we have more material out. And
Well, I ask because I know bigger bands talk about how expensive it is to go on tour now, and I can't imagine for a younger band just starting out like you guys, like, okay, that's going to be expensive.
Oh yeah. Several. You can definitely lose a lot of money doing touring if you don't do it the correct way. I mean, you're going to have problems, especially in beginning. You're not going to be renting an RV or anything like that. You're going to be in a van and a trailer.
And you really have to consider your options and think about things, because like, we can't just, we all have, like, 2 of us have families, right? And like, we all have full-time jobs and stuff. And it's like, we can't just take 2 weeks off to go tour. And especially if that tour is gonna, like, if we break even on it, it's, that's good. Yeah. But most of the time you will lose money if you're not careful. And it's just, you have to plan these things out. You have to think about them. It's like, is it worth it to go here? Or like, what do you think? Is the audience going to be appropriate there? It's not like when we were 18, like any show, let's go do it.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a
10
risk
hours away, let's do it.
Yeah, I think almost all of us own homes. Like we all own homes. We all have bills to pay for our jobs and stuff like that. So very much what he's saying, there's a logistical aspect to, are we going to lose a lot of money? Losing a little bit for exposure, there's definitely a science to it. Yeah.
It's just the realities of music business
But
today.
we can't afford, there's too much of a risk, especially with 2 of the members who have families and stuff. Like you can't, you have other people who are depending on you. You can't just lose a bunch of money on a tour. But I think a lot of that can be negated through having a lot of material and having demand there for you to play. If you don't play a lot, but if people want to see you tour, then you'll make money.
Yeah, like if the demand's there, we'll do it.
Yeah. I think the general public, and I don't care what style of music it is, they only see the show. They don't see everything that goes into getting it and how it is. And I think, it's funny enough, you said, I think PJ was talking about, we're not 18 anymore. We kind of understand. That's the one thing about getting older. You have this perspective now, and when you're involved in something, you understand what it's all about. You understand that it's the music business. It's not just about the music anymore. And if you want to do stuff, there's certain things that are involved in it. Even if you're going to do it, and even on the simplest level, you're going to record a song and release it. Like there's a business to it. We talked about DistroKid versus CD Baby or other things, before we started recording. It's like, there's all these other aspects to it just to release a song.
Yep.
I mean, if you want, I could write a song and I could just put it up on
YouTube or something.
Yeah, and that's it. But if you're a musician, or most of us want to release something, we want to do it right.
And maximum exposure, on Spotify and YouTube Music, Apple Music. We want it all distributed the way that we want people to hear our music.
Yeah. So it's interesting as we get older, like how we understand things a lot more.
Oh, yeah, more of a business mind when it comes to it, yeah.
Which brings me to my next question. How are you guys navigating the social media landscape? And I'll preface this by saying the vast majority of musicians I've talked to on this podcast, none of us really know what the heck is going on. Because it all changes. And I always say the same dang thing. The former singer of Skid Row, Sebastian Bach, I saw him and he made me laugh because I think it was very true. He said, I have 1 million followers on Facebook. I put a new album out and I can't sell 10,000 albums.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that much.
No, it doesn't.
And I'm curious, how are you guys as a younger, newer band navigating this? And what does it mean to you besides, for me, it's strictly promotion.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Like, here's the show I'm playing, here's this. I mean, I'm not trying to let me get all my fans and let me talk to you about this and let me show you what I'm eating for breakfast and this is what I look like when I woke up in the morning. How are you guys navigating?
Not a bio. Yeah.
Let's see. I do most of our social media, and the way I navigate it is I do it in a very lighthearted way. I love to joke. I don't like us to be that stereotypical big things coming band.
Yeah.
Where it's like every time an announcement happens, the world's supposed to stop because there's so many bands.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to make yourself special. You're not inherently special. And it's really like it. There's so many layers to that question. It's like you want to promote your song in the appropriate way, but you don't want to be too overbearing. You got to bump those numbers up, even if you hate the numbers.
Yeah.
They account for something because
Absolutely.
when you're looking for a band to play with, or or the venue's looking for you, that's the first thing they're looking at is how many followers do they have.
Yeah, how many followers, how many Spotify streams they have. That's going to be exactly what they go
but
to.
But that doesn't equate to anything.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and it maybe slightly. I'd say there's probably 10 to 20%. I'd say more Spotify than Facebook or any type of social media with actual followers, because anyone can follow your page and not actually even listen to your music.
Yeah. And I know I've noticed the engagement is a very important thing because going back to your example, you could have 1 million followers, but when you post something, how many people are commenting on it, how many people are liking it? Like if it's less than 100, it's like that's compared to 1 million, that's not great.
Yeah.
Because now, especially like a lot of bands are making money off of merch. Like you're not making money off of album sales. You're making pennies off of Spotify, and it's sad.
Part.
And so you're making money off of touring and merch. Like that's, and whatever your label's willing to give you as far as whatever the deal is. But that is something like you have to know who's going to come out and see you at a show and who's, and who likes you enough to buy your merch.
And funny enough, I mean, you guys probably already know this. It was news to me. I was watching this YouTube video about it. And the guy was talking about how venues even get a cut of your merch.
Oh yeah, cut merch.
Like, are you serious?
Yeah,
like,
it's insane. Like I've seen, like they'll do 50-50 splits on, and that's insane. Like and there's a lot of people in our scene and stuff that are just completely, what would you say? It's not a thing. Like we don't want it to happen. Obviously, like it's you split the door with a venue, 20-80, 50-50, whatever you're gonna do.
Reasonable.
You have your guarantee. But you don't get cuts of the merch. I think everyone is frowning in the metal community and all communities. Like that's not something that should exist because like as musicians we struggle enough with performing and creating our art, and now you want to take parts of our merch sales when you have and I mean being a venue owner is hard. I'm not gonna, but that's just something that I don't think any musician wants.
Yeah, and unfortunately with social media now, if somebody pulls something like that, it's going to get shared, and it just makes you a better band or business owner because it keeps you honest.
Yeah.
Because if you're being dishonest or you're trying to take advantage of somebody or a venue, people are going to know about it. So it goes back to something I really stress with these guys, and I don't even have to stress it. They already know, is just like whatever show you're playing, whatever business transaction you're doing, be nice.
Yeah.
Be professional, be a genuine person, because at the end of the day, they're going to remember how you treated them.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good your song was.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like with the venue, like everyone deserves to be guaranteed a living, make money and stuff, but it's really what it comes down to. Where's the line of you're taking advantage of a musician for their art?
Right.
And how much are you going to be taking for us to perform our art for exposure? And that's, that's just not a thing that should be, it should just completely be nipped in the bud right now. It just shouldn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because we're the ones who paid for the merch, we have to make, we drove 10 hours to play this show, and you're going to take 50% of our profits on our merch. It's just, and that's where
we're
our
trying to break
giant
even
chunk
anyway.
of profit comes from.
Yeah. Just to bring it back, what are you guys doing with social media for yourselves? Are you just promoting the songs and releases, or are you doing, how do you do that?
I definitely don't post what am I eating for breakfast. And everything I'm about to post, I run it by the guys first. I'm like, hey, is this cool? Is this stupid? Whatever. It's definitely, this promotes the songs or things we got coming up. Definitely promote the shows. But every now and then, throw a meme in there or a little studio update or a little funny thing.
Are you guys doing just the basic ones? Are you doing the Facebook, Instagram,
TikTok,
website? TikTok. Yeah, I don't do TikTok, but are there other ones that you're using that are new and that I don't even know about?
Not really. We do have a press kit on Bandzoogle, I think is the name.
Bandzoogle. I use Bandzoogle.
I called it Zoggle for a minute. I was like, nope, that's 2 O's.
That is a great website for musicians.
Yeah. It makes, cause I have a coding background.
Yeah.
And a web designer thing. And it really, it makes making a web page so much easier.
It does.
Anything, you can take an extremely hard task and make it simpler for the mass public. Like, it's good. And definitely utilize that, because I was going to make us a website, and then I started using that. I was like, it's already here.
Yeah. I mean, you can do sales and all. I mean, not a shameless plug, but shameless plug for Bandzoogle. They're a great company. So shout
out to Bandzoogle.
Yeah.
But aside from them, definitely the Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I about said MySpace there for a second. I just dated myself.
Well, what's the future?
The OGs know.
There you go. So what's the future plans you guys have for Fault Reset? Do you have any shows coming up? Do you guys, are you currently in the studio recording new songs? What's going on?
Currently, we're finishing up tracking for the latest EP, and that's probably going to be, we don't have a release date for it yet, but it's going to be in the next couple months.
Okay.
We have a bigger show coming up at the Rooster.
July 2nd.
July 2nd, which
Great.
it's a Tuesday. But it is with a touring band, some touring bands from Texas. I think it's My Own Will and Living Hollow. They're sick bands, and we're excited to play.
And also a Collective Insanity. I'm not sure where they're from, but...
I think they're local. They're a local. Collective's a local band, and they're going to be opening
I
with
like
us.
their stuff. I know that was like perfect match.
Yeah. Okay. And then we have a few more shows coming up, don't we?
Yeah, we got 2 in July. We got that one Norman was just talking about at the Rooster, July 2nd. We're July 20th at the Reboot Arcade in Winston-Salem.
Cool.
Which I'm super excited about that venue because it's an arcade.
Yeah.
Go play games afterwards.
Yeah.
My set's done. Let me go get some Pac-Man.
I believe we have a show at Monstercade, which is also in Winston-Salem. I believe we have that in August. But that's the ones I can name right off the top of my head.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
we're trying. I think you're trying to set up the Homer show again, just as like a little. We're getting the details worked out on that to try and play another show there.
Yeah, and, as far as getting shows, I'm just like, okay, what's this venue? Who do I have to annoy till they give us a show?
Yeah. So you guys, are you doing your own booking and stuff? Since you're just talking about shows, is that one of the things that we do as DIY musicians?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like I said, if somebody played somewhere you're going to play, talk to them, make that connection, and annoy them till they give you a show.
Be nice.
Yeah, be nice.
Be nice. Annoyingly, be nice.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's I'm sure the metal community is a smaller community, and for the most part, probably close knit. You know, these bands know this band, knows this
Definitely,
band, contacted this
Yep.
person. So, well, guys, as we start to wrap things up, if we want to get in touch with Fault Reset, how do we do that?
We're on Facebook at Fault Reset. Instagram is at Fault Reset Band. You can reach us on Gmail if you want to give me a show and not annoy, and I don't have to annoy you. That's faultresetband@gmail.com. We are also on TikTok at Fault Reset Band. Seeing a pattern here.
There we go.
And that's the main ways you can reach us.
Awesome. Well, guys, much success to you. Look forward to hearing all your new stuff when it comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it,
Thank
man.
you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right, take care, guys. Bye. Thanks for listening to episode 76 of the QCMP, and I hope you'll go back and check out past episodes. And if you'd be so kind as to leave a review, I'd greatly appreciate it. You can find the QCMP on all your favorite streaming platforms. As always, if you have an idea for an episode or would like to be a guest on the QCMP, reach out to me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out our local partners, Records on the Wall at rexonthewall.com, Reporting from 20XX at reportingfrom20xx.wordpress.com, Queen City Live at Instagram.com/Queen City Live Music, and Charlotte New Music at charlottenewmusic.org. Until next month, get out there and check out some of our local talent. Take care.